Oh my god, guys. What is going on? First of all, hello and welcome. I have a snow day today, so I'm gonna quick mostly because the Shadowrun subreddit has been super busy over the past couple of days about, oh, I'm a new GM this, oh, I'm a new GM that, oh, help, help. Um, so I wanted to do some things to help. Um, to start off today, I wanted to talk a little bit about what makes Shadowrun different than essentially, let's just be honest, the D&D and Pathfinder, because that is the largest, probably, setting that people are familiar with as far as RPGs go. Um, it comes up all the time on the subreddit, being able to just go, "Huh, here is information on what you should do and where you should go." I have a couple of ideas in my head that I want to talk about. The Twitch chat, I will hope, supplies some other ideas, but uh, I have no idea what I'm doing as far as producing content that is going to show up on YouTube and people will use as a reference. So we're going to learn about something that's super interesting, right? Step one: take everything you know about D&D, Pathfinder, your stereotypical fantasy RPGs, roll it into a tight little ball, throw it into the corner, and light it on fire. In D&D, Pathfinder, and similar settings, almost always you are playing the stalwart heroes on the land on an epic quest to defeat some greater evil and make the world a better place. There are, of course, your outliers where everybody gets together and decides, you know what, we're going to play an evil party this time and we're going to be evil. But that, unless you approach it from session zero and, the social contract involved to not turn into a group of that guy, doesn't usually last very long. People are like, well, I'm evil, so clearly I'm gonna stab you in your sleep and take all your stuff. Or, I'm evil, so I'm gonna blatantly murder civilians because I'm evil. It's what I do, right? And that's not what you should be doing. Um, there was actually a book I read forever ago back in high school because I'm an old man called Villains by Necessity, which I'll put a link in here. Um, you can find it a couple of different places, but on the short about the book, it is your main character is an assassin, a thieves guild master. Uh, they start you off, and then the rest of the party that follows in is a druid, an evil sorceress, a uh, a knight clad in the darkest of black armor with a giant steed, and it's just super imposing black knight dude, and then the bard. Um, sounds like a fairly standard set of adventures, with the exception in this case that they are all bad guys. But while they're all bad guys, they are pulled together by a need, and that need actually turns out in this case to be saving the world. I really like it because it flips a lot of that on top of their head. Um, I won't go into any more details about that because that is a total tangent for me. Just to promote a book that I really like. Um, so in Shadowrun, your average runner is at best they are just a criminal. At worst, they are a, a super terrorist, basically. You are playing people who, by default, in the your standard Shadowrun lore, um, you are paid large piles of money to do bad things to people. Maybe not directly to people, but when you go into that corporate facility and you steal their prototype, somebody is getting fired. Some other people are, getting pay cuts and all. You're doing bad things indirectly to people. Occasionally, there will be runs and jobs you do that you actually feel like you will do a positive outcome on the world. That's significantly more uh, as I struggle for words, should take some public speaking courses. Um, that is very much in the minority. Sometimes GMs will run, air quotes good or hooding campaigns where, you could be a small gang of people that get together. as part of an actual gang and you are doing things to improve your turf, that kind of thing. Um, but when somebody says Shadowrun and your base go-to is you're a bunch of criminals that is living on the outskirts of society and kind of trying to make do, you're not going to make a major impact in the world. You will topple no kings. You will right no major wrongs. You will just get by, hope to not get geeked, and hopefully live to retirement, which is not something that normally happens. You say D&D to somebody, they think Lord of the Rings, where you are on a mighty quest that will save the land. That's not Shadowrun. So take all of those notions that you have that you are in the right and you are destined in some fashion, throw them right out the window. Uh, this is going to get super awkward as I go to type. Not this to save the word. Little notes. Because otherwise you're going to stare at a bunch of boxes for the entirety of this video, and that would be not fun. Outside of that, Shadowrun works because the world is as much a character as everybody else, and it is more important than I have seen in most of my other RPG career. The if you don't have the world react reliably and realistically to the players, it kind of falls apart. In a fantasy world, seeing a troop of 5 walking around, one dude in a wizard hat and staff, another dude in plate mail carrying his sword, a dwarf with an axe, and a guy with a bow and arrow and stuff walking around, not a big deal in the fantasy world because you could be attacked at any time. Hordes of goblins could come over that hill and raze your city to the ground. In Shadowrun, we live in a civilized society. So when you are a giant troll driving around on your motorcycle with a large combat axe on your back and you go into polite society, it is our job as a game master to not necessarily punish the player, but the subtle reminding of you're openly carrying a large weapon in polite society. What would happen if outside your house or your apartment you saw a dude coming down the street like that? The chances are somebody would probably call the cops on him. He's driving around openly wielding a fire axe, or as a combat axe is a significantly larger axe. Imagine that guy is now 9.5 feet tall and has a racial stereotype of being nothing but trouble. Cops are going to get called on. And if we don't follow some of those realistic things, the world of Shadowrun begins to fall apart a little bit. In D&D and other fantasy realms, when you go into a building, and I should say building, into a dungeon, and it's full of goblins and stuff, and you kick open a door, kill them all, and then go looting through their pockets, well, that's all fun and great because nobody cares about goblins. They are, effectively vermin by most society's pictures. But at the same time, those goblins don't have cell phones to call the ogres that are waiting 2 blocks away. Contrary, in Shadowrun, your security guard that's sitting in some corp office lazily looking at a bunch of cameras, when you kick open his door and shoot him in the face, people are going to care because he's not vermin. He is not a blight on the land. He's Steve. He's got a wife, 2 kids, a dog, lives in a crappy corporate-owned apartment, and gets by, as is the want and need of many, many, many people in the world today, and significantly more in the world of Shadowrun when things get even worse for your average person. Your Sinless doesn't have any rights, where Steve, the security guard, he's lucky to have the rights and powers that he has as an employee of whichever corporation it is. So there's your first big disconnect. Not only does he himself count for something because he is not a goblin, but he also has a cell phone. And in addition to a cell phone, there are other various security means that are going on. where when he gets shot, maybe he has a biomonitor. Maybe there are sound sensors in the room that react to the sound of the gunshot going off. Then all of a sudden everybody's on alert. Secondly, if Steve sees you on the cameras doing various criminal things, he's going to hit his 911 button, which is then going to begin to call HTR. And HTR are very much your ogres that live down the block. And when they get involved, it gets really, really bad for the runners. I'll go a little bit more detail on that later on. So there's your first giant disconnect, and that's not even just for a security thing. Everybody around them probably at one point in their life is going to have a nosy neighbor. This is the person that calls when you're having a party and gets the cops to show up. Well, there's gunshots or very shady criminal activity going on. Well, some nosy neighbor is going to call Night Errant to come take a look at that. Fantasy areas, that doesn't happen because those 5 dudes in armor and wizards and stuff. Major cities, there's piles of them all over the place. Outside in your little burgs and tiny villages that are just ripe for the pillaging, they're happy to have these people around because they are going to be the ones that are defeating the goblin horde or the undead army or whatever it is that is plaguing the village, because every village is always plagued. Shadowrun, not really. The general populace is being controlled via marketing by the mega corporations, and they are making a tidy profit off of you. They are trying to force you to buy their products so that they can continue to make more products and collect more of your money while keeping you a controlled sheep. Which, if you start to get into the Shadowrun thought process, you will notice that that's exactly what's happening in our real life today. And it's why the Shadowrun subreddit has a bunch of, one step closer posts that show up. And it's like, hey, doesn't this remind you of Shadowrun? It gets a little scary when you start thinking about it. But security guards and your nosy neighbors aren't the only ones that can call in ogres on you. Your gangers that are hanging out on the street corner outside of the stuffer shack, hassling people because that's what they do. Well, if you start giving trouble, chances are they have some buddies that are around the corner. Maybe not necessarily directly around the corner, but they could be nearby. They probably have motorcycles or vehicles or some other kind of thing. And, part of the point of being in a gang is that you are part of a family. When you start messing with one part of it, the rest of it's going to come in on you. So, yeah, there might have been 3 gangers outside that stuffer shack, and you may be 2 guys on a food fight run. You start crap with them. All of a sudden, you got 8 more gangers that roll deep on you. And they brought Tony the troll. And he's not a smart man, but he's strong. And then we get into organized crime. Similar to gangs, but significantly smarter. They may not go for the immediate repercussions, but you know what? When they remember that you were the guys that did that thing to us, all right, here's what's going to happen. We're going to call you up. We're going to offer you a job. But here's the thing. You're going to do this job, and then we're going to forget about this other thing you did to us, because reputation is very important to both runners and various other criminal organizations. I'll probably end up doing a talk about street cred and notoriety and such. That'll be slightly down the line. So the second difference is goblins do not call. That gets compounded on because HTR is a first responder type situation. For GMs, when your runners do poorly and they spawn HTR, you should remember that, one, this doesn't despawn all their previous enemies. They are still there, and part of it hates using video game terms on this, but hey, that's what everybody is familiar with. In addition, that team of HTR that comes fast roping in through the roof, kicking in doors, all tactical style, they're just the first responders. there can be secondary groups of HDR that come. Man, audio totally cut out on me. What is the last thing you guys heard? I need to change this so that I can actually see when that little green bar stops going. Because apparently my headset doesn't like doing that. So where he now? Testing. This is great. Okay, so the super awkward are when I put this up on YouTube and there's this time of no talking and then stuff because I don't have any video editing skills. I should invest some carbon into that. Maybe uh increase that skill. Should be a good idea. I can fix all of this. Anyway, um, so yeah, your HTR is then going to take control of the local responders, your on-site security, your um, your knight errant that is in the area, that kind of thing. Um, and not only will they take control of them, they will also use them to what makes it better. You know, you will have your HCR guys that are going through the building trying to take out the runner team. Meanwhile, Knight Errant is downstairs in the streets setting up barricades, spike strips, roadblocks, keeping civilians out of the way. Remember that HTR Matrix support don't have to worry about Overwatch score because they are working with God most times. They'll be like, "Yo, we got a situation. We are here to do our thing. You know it. We're good. Don't don't pay attention to these com codes." And that's what happens. The knight errant guys downstairs are going to keep civilians out of the area. They will keep extra eyes on the building, throw up giant spotlights if you're going super crazy. Um, they will also have control of grid guide, so all of the traffic in the area will be routed away from there. Which means if you are unable to drive your vehicle, yeah, sure, you can throw on grid guide, but then when you're the only one in that little block that turns on grid guide, it will tell you pull over. There is an emergency situation, and then they know exactly where you are. Um, so in D&D, I should not comment too much on fifth edition stuff because I'm not super familiar with it. However, in older versions, you didn't have the if goblins had some ogres they were working with and they were together, the ogres didn't suddenly make the goblins way smarter. They didn't improve their tactics. They didn't make things worse, and the dungeon all of a sudden didn't start to work against you. The dungeon stayed the same no matter what combat was going on. Where in Shadowrun, when things go loud, the entire world reacts. Because in addition to just the security people, you're going to have news people are going to be sort of on site depending upon where you are. They're going to be like, "Yo, something's happening. This means ratings. Ratings mean Nuyen. I need to be here." Um, that's another way that it is different. So I guess that'd be like the world is also your enemy. Other major ways that it's different is that you are typically nobody special. This is more of a backstory type thing. In your fantasy lands, you could very easily be the descendant of some long forgotten king, last of a bloodline, and sole chance for the world's survival. In Shadowrun, you're a dude who does things for money. You may be a mage, you may be a technomancer, you may be a street samurai. Chances are you are not an immortal elf that has a cell phone line to Damien Knight. That, let me side tangent here. If that is the game that you guys want to play, some high roller ridiculous situations where you've got Loafweir and Damien Knight and Harlequin and all those other ridiculously named people on your can call list, go right ahead. It is your game. I am not here to tell you that you are not having the right kind of fun. Go nuts. Most of what I talk about is going to be in your standard. I can mention Shadowrun to anybody, and their immediate first thoughts is going to be criminals doing bad things for money, trying to get by and not get geeked. So I'll write that on my background as you are not special. Because at the end of the day, the difference between a Shadowrunner and a wage slave is typically one event. A man could be working in a warehouse, have some Shadowrunners do a thing on there, and because of that, he ends up losing his job because he takes the fall. All right, now I have very little actionable skills. I am potentially potentially now see as a criminal. At the very least, I probably lost my job, and all of that other wonderful things that comes with being the fall guy for a corporation. Or you could be, let's take it the other end. Let's say you were an undercover cop. 15 years ago, you were sent to do undercover things in let's go with the mafia because you have some Italian heritage, sure. And then Crash 2.0 happens. All of a sudden, your sin is gone, your savings is gone, your everything is gone, and your only connections to the world right now is this criminal organization that you were previously spying on. Thankfully, the crash took all of your information away, so even if they did find it, you all of a sudden, it's not actually there. You don't have to worry about that being found out. But your only chance of getting back into the world are these criminals that you've been spying on for the past several months to a year. You're stuck here. You got to make the best of your situation. Maybe you were working for a corporation and it turns out you're actually a technomancer and your corporation was Neonet and they like to cut open technomancer heads, so you run. One bad day is all that separates a Shadowrunner from a normal person, and the desire, that self-preservation instinct to do what it takes to survive. Whereas in your fantasy settings, probably most of your other settings, you do what you're going to do for the quest because you are trying to make the world a better place. It is for the good of the land and for honor and glory and all of that other stuff. Your personal self-preservation is much lower on the list. Many good role players would gladly sacrifice their character's life for that epic, heroic moment at a important part of the story. The bad guy's on a cliff. He has an object of great power in his hand. He's monologuing as all bad guys are prone to do. And he's like, I am going to tackle him into the pit of lava. GM's like, okay, you realize this is not a situation you can survive. The player goes, yes, this is what my character would do. Here's my run test. And then you a good GM in that situation will let his player ignore all the rest of the rules, and you made that running test, or you made that one unarmed test, which was just a touch attack, so you don't have to worry about his armor class and all that other poor shit. And you will tackle the bad guy into the lava, and that part of the story will be talked about in your gaming circle for years to come because you made that moment. Shadowrunners are not heroes; they are people that are trying to survive. Um, so, and in trying to survive, occasionally you will meet with a team of other people that you can coexist with. They may even be your friends after a point as they get together and you guys do more and more jobs for you, make more and more money. Relationships can form and all that other kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, chances are, unless it's for another member of your team, you're not tackling that bad guy into the lava. It's You'll probably shoot him, and then the combat will happen, and the giant bad guys will do giant bad guy things. It'll still be an epic moment, but most times your runner won't sacrifice himself like that. They're inherently greedy and do things for money. Again, if you want to play the nice guy campaign, go ahead, do it. It's fine. Just remember that while you may be nice guys, most of the guys you're stealing or shooting are normal people, and by default, shooting them makes you not a nice guy. The I think I only have like two more things on the subject. One of which was the I struggle to find words yet again. I should really write down some notes on this beforehand. Yeah, no, I lost it. Another big difference is going to be your gear. Things in fantasy worlds are like you get a longsword, and your longsword is great. Be your father's longsword, whatever. Later down the line, after a couple of levels, you are going to get a longsword +1, which at that point will take your father's longsword that's been handed down by the generations, and you're going to sell it at a vendor because you have a longsword +1. There's no reason for you to carry that longsword because this one hits better, does more damage, that kind of thing. In Shadowrun, your gear is not nearly so special. The difference between an AK-97 and an Ares Alpha is 1 damage value. That is not going to make or break your build. And if it does, your character or your game has larger problems, which maybe that'll be another episode. Who knows? The amount of times that I see people will take different items specifically because it's got an additional damage value, or they'll try and take restricted gear for like the best in slot weapon because it has 1 more AP and 2 more damage values. Like you don't really need that. A big argument I will get into people all the time with is typically about archery, because it's like, a rating 10 bow does the same damage as a AK-97, and the easy answer is yes, it has the same damage code. However, there are a large number of incidentals, which I won't get into here because I can just link a post that I made on the subject a while ago. Your incidentals and that kind of thing make a lot more difference in Shadowrun. Whether or not you have a single shot, a semi-auto, a burst fire, or a full auto capable weapon is super important for throwing lead down range. The type of ammo you have it loaded with, also super important. The fact that it was made by your father's father and passed down the line for generations, not important. Because what you are using in Shadowrun is typically a mass-produced item that you've got in military surplus. And yeah, you could throw a little bit of that stuff on there if it fits with your character concept, but it's typically not that big of a deal. You're not going to find magic items that give you +1 to your gymnastics roll. That's not how Shadowrun works. Excuse me as I take a drink there as I'm parched. The the fantasy land, you are going to be on a quest for some ancient item to defeat the unspeakable evil. Shadowrun, you're on a quest for the ultimate evil, the evil that is New, and that is a quest that everybody wants. You got to get paid. Um, so equipment is a pretty big difference in Shadowrun than it is in fantasy. Epic loots, right? Um, I often say in Shadowrun, your most headset cut out there again. I gotta find a way to fix that. Um, I often say in Shadowrun, your most powerful weapon is money. People will ask in our Skype OSC chat for the hub. It's like, oh, I got this much money. What should I buy? Most of the times, the answer I give them is nothing. Don't buy anything until it gets to a point where you need it, or you have some extra money left over. Because going into a run without any money can be like, all right, guys, we're all fresh out of character generation. We want to do this crazy plan to complete the run, but we have no cash. So that becomes difficult, and you don't have the resources to push the buttons that you want to push. Um, that makes the other incidental aspects of it. You can use it to rent things, be it a hotel room near the target that you are looking to do some planning and stake out from. You can use it to pick up drugs that you need for this one-time job, or to pick up a disposable vehicle that you rent under a fake sin and then drive into the river. Or just bribery. Like straight up bribery is incredibly powerful. Um, but Nuyen is not something you can wear. Whereas in D&D, you're always looking for that +1 sword, that +1 shield, your rings, your trinkets, your goofy magic items. And Shadowrun just doesn't work that way. I guess we put that down is not gear centric? Question mark, because it kind of is gear centric in the way that. Great, I can't spell that. I'm gonna leave it there for all of the future to. Close enough. Whatever. Um. So your character is the other huge thing, and I have a small series on my channel about this. When you go and look at a D&D character's character sheet, you will see their class, how many HPs they have, their 2-hit bonus, and that kind of stuff. Um, but how much of that really tells you about who that character is? I'll bring up a character that I played in a Pathfinder game, which, granted, I don't know how much this has changed in more recent versions of D&D, but for Pathfinder, um, really should have had this open beforehand, but now I can't find it. Pathfinder. I put that link into Twitch chat. I'll save it for later. Looking at his sheet, it tells you very little about who he is. You see that he is a level 2 rogue on this sheet. You see that he has a bunch of dexterity. He has a decent other stats because we were playing a high um, build point campaign where we got to choose our actual stats out. And I went for a nice even build so that I got pluses to everything. You can see that he has acrobatics, appraise, bluff, climb, craft, diplomacy, disable device, knowledge, dungeoneering, knowledge, local. He was a rogue, so by default he gets a whole bunch of skill points as he levels up. So I got a whole bunch of different things on him. So that's great. Who is he? Well, he's a goblin. If I look down here at his feats, he has point blank shot, which seems like it is going to go towards maybe a archery oriented build because that is a feat that deals with ranged attacks rather than rolling up and sneak attacking him. Okay, that's great. That is the only thing that I see on his sheet. Um, that tells me the kind of even his play style, like that singular feat's like, okay, he is going to shoot people with a ranged weapon. Now, when I go in here to my character sheet stories stuff from the other series on my channel, and I pull out BA or Back Alley, and we compare her sheet to Zandor Goghili's sheet, and all of a sudden we can immediately get a feel for her as okay, well, she's got a bunch of back alley knowledge and drugs and gangs. So she probably is more of a street kid. She also has a little bit of um, goblin rock music as a music specialization knowledge skill. She has the athletics group and the outdoors group, so she's active. She runs, she jumps a lot of places. Down here in her quality, she's got Baron's Rat and School of Hard Knocks and a prejudice against law enforcement and a criminal sin, and she is uneducated. So total street kid through and through, gives you that attitude immediately as to how she's Aladdin with a complete outward disregard for the local law enforcement. Hates it. Is gonna at least raise some lip and probably be smacked at least once when she is arrested. That is that is who she is. Um, so go in here in characters, not stat blocks, and that is a benefit of how the Shadowrun character creation system works between your knowledge skills and your contacts and the way that the qualities work out. They allow you to show a lot more of who the character is, not what they do. Chances are in fantasy settings, you're going to have a fighter, a cleric, a wizard, and a thief because you need somebody to hit things. You need somebody to heal you because you got hit. You're going to need somebody to do weirdo magic stuff because there's going to be some locked door somewhere and you need him to cast knock on it or to make somebody else invisible. And you're going to need somebody to open chaps and check for chests. That was backwards, and I'm going to leave it that way, not try to correct myself. Um, Shadowrun's characters aren't necessarily like that. You are able to actually see who they are with right out of character generation rather than at level 10 or something. That is a difference in how the character creation works, and then into character progression. When you get into those higher levels and you have all of the dual wield feats to make dual wielding really good for you, or you have the crazy I forget the name of it. There's a feat in Pathfinder where rogues can apply their sneak attack to anybody that has effectively a debuff on them. They get their flatfoot bonus against them. Lets you sneak attack basically every round. It's crazy. But I can't get that until like level 8 because that's how that system progresses. In Shadowrun, rather than getting another level of Street Samurai, you can spend your karma wherever you want it. You can all of a sudden, instead of increasing your shooting dice, maybe he gets into performance. Maybe he picked up an instrument and likes that a bit more. Maybe he, after seeing his teammates shot so much, he starts to pick up some ranks in first aid and medicine. Maybe after a certain other run, he needed to worry about being able to get through a door easily, so he improves his lockpicking skill. Or he begins to go to college, so he's going to raise his logic. It gets wildly diverse. First of all, straight up at character generation, because not every Street Samurai is going to be built the same. there are too many differences in how and where you can put your points, and not enough points, and no super optimal build because again, you're building a character, not a stat block. The karma rewards also uh, incentivize growing wide rather than tall because of the way that karma costs begin to increase for your your different skill. The higher your skill, the more karma is going to cost you to raise it even higher. Where picking up a couple of ranks at a low skill of something you're not really good at is going to be cheaper. Um, I don't feel like I have anything else really for the rest of this off the top of my head. If the Twitch chat has anything on this subject they want to ask my feelings about, sure, we can give that another couple of minutes to talk about because I don't want to make this too terribly long. And then perhaps we will stop and come back on to another subject like today, but a different stream, so it's a different file I can upload. So anybody from the Twitch have anything they want to say on this, or should I just cut it at 39 minutes? Well, somebody's got something. Waiting patiently. How do you show how small someone is? Are you talking physical stature or um like their verticality is what you're asking about? Oh, okay. So you're asking so you asked, how do you show someone how small someone is? I've got players who think they're hot shit, can kill dragons, etc. In that situation, it's kind of the thing that they are going to find out themselves one day. Overconfidence is a killer. So what you could do, theoretically, is if they thought they were hot shit, you could set up a non-canon instance. Like, all right, here you guys are. Here is a dragon statted out. Go ahead. Go ahead and try. And then when they realize that their weapons don't do anything and that the dragon is effectively dropping force 12 spirits on them because you're not fighting the dragon alone. It's got all kinds of that's actually a good thing. The um Shadowrun monsters, for the lack of a better term, have um a lot of insubstantials that are not written out on their stat sheet. For example, as I open up my Hero Lab, which is a fantastic system, and I choose a race, and I go down here to dragons. Let's go with a Western dragon. For starters, they are body 18, strength 40, agility 7, uh, with 19 dice to hit you. So what you do is you go to your Street Samurai and you roll your 16 plus 2d6 initiative. You roll your 19 dice to hit him. And then you ask him to soak 40p damage. And when he drops to the ground, like, damn, that sucked, then you ask them if they want to continue. In that first round, because it's going to take more than that one round, um, remember that dragons have edge. A Western dragon has 6 edge and magic 10. So you're going to be casting lots and lots of high force spells. Dragons are typically multi-grade initiates, in which case you're going to maybe have some quicken spells on him. Maybe he has a increased reflexes spells on him. Maybe he has a increased agility spell on him. Maybe he has an armor spell. All of that other crazy stuff, whatever you want. Dragons know all the magic that they could ever want. So there you go. You could force 20 flamethrower them. After they get the that first combat round, the physical contact of them swiping out with a claw and going whack, and then watching them try to soak 40 damage, if they want to continue, then break out all the other crazy stuff that they can do. All right, on the dragon's next turn, it's going to simple action command one of its spirits, because it's got 22 dice in binding, so it probably has a force 10 spirit or 3, because it's charisma 8, hanging around that owe it some favors, because why wouldn't it? It'll simple action to command him, and then it'll recklessly cast with its 16 dice base drain pool, let's say an invisibility spell. All right, there you go. It's invisible now. Have fun. Or maybe it'll cast something else like... Sorry, my cat's being super annoying. Turn to goo. That's a good one. So now there's an additional monster spawning, and it is now turned one of your PCs with its 24 spellcasting dice by default into a pile of goop on the ground. Do you still want to fight me? That's what it comes down to. They will have 18 points of hardened armor, as per what is telling me right here. So if your Ares Alpha plus APDS does not do 12 points of damage to it, which in this case is probably fairly easy to do. It's bad times. Your damage doesn't do anything. So to answer Twitch again, it doesn't necessarily need to be turned to go. It could be petrify. Congratulations, you're a statue. Have a nice day. It could be any of their critter powers. Like there is, was it? They have an elemental attack they can do. I thought they had a AOE fear power. Just kind of, you're all screwed as it rolls its willpower plus magic. Or in the case of just a Western Dragon, 18 dice versus your against your willpower plus logic. And you can't even face me until you got out from underneath that fear power. So good game. And that doesn't even cause them drain or anything. They just, and you're afraid, and you're afraid, and you're afraid, and you can soak 40p as I punch you. So sure, set them up in an arena and have them do it. Thoughts on Metasapiens and Shifters as PCs? So one of the giant things that you need to remember about Shadowrun is your Shifters are animals first, people second. A lot of times people will go with the tropes that they know from other systems of, I'm a person who can turn into an animal. In Shadowrun, that is not the case. You are actually a fox or a mountain lion or a bear. And for some reason, and GM should require a pretty decent reason for your people as an animal to come into society. The the easiest one is like a canine shifter is like you were a family dog and something happened to your family, and all of a sudden you are coming into there uh, to try and maybe you avenge whatever happened to attack your family. The reason those two came first is because those were the two active shifters on the hub. For people in the future, I play a mountain lion shifter. Her name is Casa. She was doing her mountain lion thing. Then one day, some poachers came in and took her cubs, and uh, her reaction to that was not well. And some of the Nan, don't remember if I chose which tribe they were from. Probably Sioux because that is her tradition. That's not important right now. Came across that as it was happening, and they broke her out. But the poachers got away with her cubs. So now they have equipped her as best they could for a little bit, and she is currently in Seattle looking for um, information to find out what happened to track down the next line of that story. As this is for a runner hub game and not a personal campaign, I'm never expected to actually find her cubs. However, she is a mountain lion. She has very little concept of things like Nuyen, or there was an RP section that I was involved in where two of the characters were dating. And it was like, oh. And a lot of her commentary was to, oh, you will make a nice mother when you mate. And things along those lines. Like, he looks strong. He will give you good cubs. She's an animal. And that's a pretty big difference to most other situations. God damn my headset. Um, as far as metasapiens, I would be really careful about what I allow. I would ask to sit down in the session zero type stuff and talk, because your standard Shadowrun setting is Seattle. And in Seattle, it is a cold and wet and dreary place, and Naga are cold blooded. So you're going to have a whole mess of problems, in addition to the fact that you are a snake. Naga follow the more traditional um, mythology where they are snakes with people faces and not four-armed snake men kind of situations that most other things have them portrayed as. If you were playing a more southern or more temperate climate to even a hot climate, sure, they make a lot more sense to be in that area. I believe Run Faster actually lists them as being active in Amazonia and I want to say some of the Indian area countries, but I'm sure that I'm wrong and somebody will correct me. Um, for most of them, pixies, centaurs, Sasquatches, rather than somebody who wants to like, I want to play a Sasquatch because I want to be Bigfoot. Um, well, why did Bigfoot come down and out of the mountains? If between the player and the GM, maybe the other players at the table, you can come up with a reason for it to make sense for that character to fit in with the group and into um, society at large, go for it. Or if you're playing a Shadowrun based game where you're all playing as a bunch of uh, Braves out in the Nan, go for it. Go be the Sasquatch that lives nearby that they interact with. Um, go nuts. You guys go have all the weird, crazy fun you want to have. I had a player that played a pixie in one of the games that I was in because the justification for her being with the team was that one night she was tired and the rigger was paying a parking ticket and their glove box was open. So they, not really understanding because it's a pixie, it's uneducated and not really familiar with how our society works. It flew in through her window, found the nice warm cave of her glove box, and went to sleep in there. Rigger comes back out from paying her ticket, slams the glove box closed, and drives off to go home. Doesn't find the pixie for 2 days later, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is strange and awkward, and that is how that pixie got introduced to the other player characters. Um, Kind of funny and silly, but at the same time, it gives a reason for that person to be there. Um, so long as it makes sense and not just I want to play the drow that interacts with society because I want to be a Sam. I want to go against the trend of everything for my people, and I'm going to make up some contrived backstory as to support why that is, which is where it comes down to character concept and not backstory. You can write a ridiculous old man Henderson backstory for a just about any situation, um, to justify whatever weirdo thing you want to be. Whereas if you just have a concept that that makes sense in the world, um, that is more important. That the concept fits rather than the the backstory fits. Uh, so it's about an hour now ish. I guess if you guys have any other questions on this thing, we'll do it. Otherwise, I will cut this. Take a couple of minutes to redo whatever it is I got to do. Go to the bathroom, grab a drink, that kind of stuff. Um, and then maybe I'll come back with whatever my next little topic is. If you guys have other topics you want me to ramble on endlessly about the Twitch chat, I will go to do that. All right, Lamppost, you got one? What you got, Lamppost? So shooting back to some of the earlier stuff, don't some of those Shadowrun tropes work in other settings too? Yes. My main statement that I am uh, trying to make is that it's a so you continued on to like not making the world just a backdrop to the action. So yes, you can totally have the cinematic event where you are saving a town from being ransacked by goblins, and there are civilians running around and all that kind of crazy stuff, but that is typically more of a set piece type thing than it is standard operating procedure. Um, D&D being Dungeons and Dragons, when you're in a dungeon, it's really hard to have that dungeon interact with the players when they're going about their daily business. Um, for example, a fight breaks out in the dungeon. Chances are, if you're more than a maybe a couple of twists and turns away, that kind of thing, nobody else is going to come and get involved because one, it's really hard to locate that kind of stuff with all the echoes of the different walls and the doors and all that other kind of crazy stuff. Um, Whereas in Shadowrun, there is specific audio equipment to help with that. There are cameras all over the place to do it. There's matrix perception tests that you can do it. Um, and there's all kinds of random things that can happen. Like, because instead of a dungeon, which has a reputation for being dark, dank, wet, and not very hospitable, we're talking about an office building where you have your office linebacker, Terrible Terry Tate, come in and make sure people are putting uh, their TPS ports together correctly. Not, oh, we're gonna hole up in this dank little hole and kind of just camp for the evening. Um, a good GM will always make the world more than a backdrop, but in Shadowrun, in order to really separate it from the your standard RPG fare, it's basically a requirement and a requirement's a bad word. Um, Screw it, we'll stick with requirement. Um, to get that real Shadowrun experience, I've taken to recently on the subreddits mentioning things like Cyberpunk D&D. And if you want to play Cyberpunk D&D, that's fine. You want to kick in corporate doors, shoot up the place, fight off helicopters, and do other crazy stuff, go for it. Have fun. I'm not going to tell you not to. That was the thing I thought about earlier, um, which makes this really awkward considering killing is secondary. In your standard D&D type setting, you are going to go into the dungeon. You are going to kick open doors. You are going to murder everything in front of you, and you're going to go through its pockets for loose change. In Shadowrun, non-lethal should be your primary combat resolution tactic for a great many reasons. One, you can always escalate. Once they are knocked out on the ground, you can switch clips, put a bullet in their head, done. Two is corps hate losing money. While they do understand that Shadowruns happen and they even have their budget organized with this is how much we can expect to lose on Shadowruns against us. This is how much we're expected to spend on Shadowruns to get other things and that kind of scenario. When you go in there and it is Steve, the security guard, and he gets shot in the head, and his aforementioned wife and two children are now without their main provider, the company is probably going to have to pay out some form of death benefits or hazard pay. They're going to have to pay a cleaning crew to come in and clean up Steve's blood off the ground, not to mention repair whatever it is that you actually took. So now you've increased their bottom line. Because now they need to, Steve is dead. Let's get Samuel up here to take Steve's job. But now we have to train Samuel to do Steve's job. And that's more money that we're out. And if you continue to do this kind of stuff, you should gain a reputation for being essentially a crazy person that just likes to kill people. Unless killing Steve was the goal. If it was Samuel actually was the Johnson and said, you know what? I'm going to spend some of my money to get Steve killed so that I can have his job and make more money. That's fine. And that kind of stuff will happen all the time. I guess the third part of it is professional courtesy. If you have a reputation for just killing your opposition all of the time, when you are eventually captured or in a firefight with another force that is equivalent to you, you're going to want them to not murder you. It's a business type situation. You guys are both there to perform a job. Maybe you're both hired to steal the same thing, and they got there before you, so you guys get in a little bit of a shootout. If you're using lethal rounds or have a reputation for using lethal rounds, they will probably not think twice about killing. Whereas in a professional world between professional criminals, there's a certain amount of respect that should go on, and if they are also not crazy murder hobos, they will be running non-lethal. So you guys will get in a fight. You may lose out on the job and have your street samurai go down and have to do a fighting retreat, and they get the MacGuffin and get out of there. But your street samurai is going to wake up. He's not going to die. Whereas if you have a reputation for being crazy murder people that kills everybody in front of you and horrifically tortures them, maybe they're rolling APDS and now your street samurai has to burn edge because that's how your team has been running it. Um, Similarly with looting, you're being paid thousands of Nuyen to go do a thing. If you're going through Steve's pocket for his comlink and his predator, all right, you've gotten 400 more Nuyen, and you're now carrying on evidence from your crime. I, you're supposed to be professionals. If I wanted somebody to kill Steve for no money, but knowing they're gonna rifle through his pockets, I would go get those 3 gangers from the stopper shack. Be like, yo, when this guy comes out, here's $1,000. Shoot him in the head and kill him. That's inconsequential in comparison to hiring Shadowrunners to do it. I know I totally went off on a tangent there, Lamppost. Did that answer your question about world just being a backdrop? As I click over here, check things. Awesome. In that case, I'm going to hit the stop recording button, uh, go do some things, and I'll be back in like 10 minutes and we can talk about something else. If you guys have a preferred topic, throw it in the Twitch chat and we'll see what we get when we come back. Or we can do one of the crazy character generation things I was talking about earlier. So I will see you guys in like 10.